Perhaps it's because as a community, if everybody's doing it, it gives us permission to feel what we really feel.
If we're all grieving or being sad about the same thing, we are actually comforted by other people feeling as shit as we do.
It's a dead center. Ooh, yeah.
Hi.
Hello. Welcome to It's a Death Sentence.
Hi there.
Today we're talking about collective grief.
We are. Grief of a nation.
Grief of a nation. This was one of your ideas, which I thought was really good.
Yeah. What happens when everybody's grieving?
Very interesting concept to talk about because it's not something we've even touched on, I don't think, before.
No.
We've never discussed COVID.
No, and that was massive.
Yeah, and we've never discussed a celebrity death, I don't think.
No, and you know, they die in threes.
Yes.
So they say.
At the age of 27, whatever it is, the magic number. So that's what today's episode's about. So take it away, Carrie.
So what happens when everyone is grieving at the same time? Why do you think we cry for people that we don't know?
Oh, it's a really good question. So got like very early memories of things like that. So it's a very dark note to start on, but I know that you probably won't mind that. But I remember being a child when Jamie Bulger was killed.
Yes.
Now, we are the same age as his killers.
Yes, yeah.
And I remember being in my bedroom and hearing my mum cry, really crying, and going in and her trying to explain to me, because I think they were 10, weren't they? We were 10.
That was kids killing kids.
Kids killing kids. And her trying to explain to me at 10 years old why she was crying. She'd heard this on the radio, right? The news had broke. And I'm watching her and she's properly distressed. And then I remember her talking to the school moms and stuff about it and seeing that look that was really unfamiliar to me. So this is my first experience of any kind of collective grief in such a sad situation. But that swept the nation, didn't it? Absolutely. And it stayed with us. I mean, look how many years later it is. I don't know whether we had anything just quite as horrifying, but how that really did affect people.
I think that was the first time it was like kids on kids that it was ever
Documented
that way. And also our mums would have had small children and the thought of them losing us.
Or us being the killer.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember there was a mad drive on like video games and, you know, like movie violence, kids being...
they were trying
sort of saying that, you know, kids shouldn't be exposed to video games where they kill, and that makes killers, is what they're saying.
Yeah.
You know, I remember that being a thing.
I think that at that time, there's got to be a response, hasn't there? There's got to be a public response, and we've got to find a reason for this absolutely unreasonable thing that's happened.
I think everyone was outraged that they were so young, the killers.
Yeah.
Like, how could that be?
And what on earth was in their life to make them behave the way they did with such violence?
I mean, it was
with
shocking.
Such premeditated violence as well. But yeah, so that was my first experience, and it really has stayed with me. Like, I remember going into my mum's room, remember what kind of like weather it was and like all that kind of stuff. Because it's, you know, we've talked about that in an episode, haven't we? Those kind of really distinct memories. So that was the first time I'd ever experienced like a collective grief in a way that was observational more than anything. I don't think I really understood it. I couldn't understand it. But seeing other parents and seeing what then unfolded in our press. When our media.
Because media, that's the biggest.
And you're going back a long time then as well. So, you know, it was newspaper heavy. It was the television news heavy.
Yeah.
There was no social media.
No,
people weren't texting people about things like that. You know, there was no mobile phones or anything, was there? So, yeah, I think that's my first experience of it. And then really, there's been the next biggest one would have been Princess Diana.
Well, she was probably the one. I mean, I remember Jamie Bulger, but I remember my mum being upset about Princess Di.
Yeah. How did you feel about watching your mum be upset by somebody she didn't personally know?
I found it fascinating because I think that people, as like, you know, the everyday folk, we see in celebrity something that we can associate with in our own life, either a memory that we've got, or so for like Princess Di, I think she was in a relationship that she wasn't happy with.
Yeah, that
she was
felt
obviously
trapped in.
unwell. She was trapped. She was trying to get out. She obviously
Had 2 young children.
There was a lot that I think mirrored how my mum felt probably around that time.
That's interesting.
So I feel like
was she a royalist? Was she massively into Princess Di?
not massively,
but then lots of people who weren't, they still loved her, didn't they?
Because she was you know, she was the nation's sweetheart, wasn't she? And she was great for charity, and she was kind, and she was giving, and she was fun.
Yeah, she was far more human than the rest of the royals. Human.
Yeah, and I think that seeing that human element of her, I think it just resonated with a lot of people, and that is why the nation mourned her. And then she was hounded by the media, and they wanted somebody to blame, and it was on every news channel, you know, there was updates constantly about it. She found love and then she died, you know.
Do you think there's an element of, I think what you've just said is absolutely bang on. I think she was very accessible to the average person. But I also wonder, when you look at a nation grieving in the way they did for Princess Diana, whether it is a controversial viewpoint, but whether it's a bit bandwagony, you know, whether there are people who joined in with that huge outpouring of grief because it was something that they could all do together. You know, was there an element of people that it wasn't genuine from, just because they want to be involved with something that's, you know, fairly interesting to be part of?
Probably. And, you know, for sometimes it's the only way for some people to get a connection. You know, some people could be so singular and on their own and have no one around them, and that might be an opportunity for them to connect with other people in like a shared experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And that makes sense. I think it's interesting because, again, talking about Princess Diana, you and I would have had a very similar experience of that. Interestingly, you've reflected on watching your mom go through that. I do remember my parents talking about it and them being sad. For me, it was the bombardment of the news coverage of people's harrowed faces in the street, you know, absolutely such like palpable, distraught looking. I think, again, well, I don't know what age we were, because we're same age as Prince, I can't remember his name. William, yeah, we're the same birth year as him, aren't we? So, again, we're looking at it really still from quite a child's perspective, a nation grieving. But I just remember thinking, why are all these people so sad?
They didn't know her.
Yeah,
but they felt like they did.
But then through the eyes of a child,
it's that you know, it's got a name. Parasocial relationship.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's amazing.
And it's basically where you're invested in somebody, but it's non-reciprocal. They don't feel the same because they don't know you, but it's
a bit like being absolutely besotted with a
pop star.
Being
a stalker. Yeah, well, not like being a stalker, but like, you know, that would be a very intense version of it. But you basically build up a relationship on what you see in the media.
Ooh, and right.
You know, like if something you see in the media, like someone you follow, say, and you identify with them, you understand, you think, yeah, well, I've got that in my life, and you follow them, and you think they're great. You know, like we listen to Francesca Amber.
Yeah.
You sort of follow those people, and you watch them, and you think, oh, you know, there's a reason why you follow them, but that relationship is parasocial because she doesn't know you.
No, it's single-sided.
So that's what that relationship is called.
Yeah. I didn't know that. I've seen that a lot in music.
Yeah.
I've seen it so often when I've like toured with bigger bands and stuff like that, and seen the fans and what they're like, that they feel that they know the artist, and they don't. They've got no idea that you know, more often than not, like that phrase, "Don't meet your heroes," is fucking accurate a lot of the time.
And you've met a few.
I've met a few, but I think, I didn't know that was its name. That's very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
So, yeah, again, we've deviated, but back to Princess Diana, that kind of outpouring, that public outpouring. At the age I was, I can't recall having a personal feeling towards it, but I do remember my mom explaining to me that she's a mom whose died and left behind
Her
children that were my age.
Yeah.
And that makes you, as a child, be able to understand it in a different way. But I still think I didn't quite understand why all of these people were just so upset.
Yeah, I probably felt the same way as you. I don't think I...
Can you think of a public figure now that you might feel that upset about if they died? David Attenborough.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, I don't know him.
I don't know him,
But I
would
feel
I shed
sad.
a tear for it? I'd feel really sad because he's a treasure, isn't he? He's the
Yeah,
nation's
national
treasure.
treasure.
But I can't think of a celebrity or a member of the royal family, or dare I say an MP or something like that I feel so utterly invested in that if they died, I would be forced to shed a tear because I don't know them. So for me, I don't know. I can't think of a single person.
I mean, recently, I've got to big up Birmingham because they had a big procession for Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah.
Because he's a Brummie, isn't he?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and he did his last concert in
Yeah.
Birmingham, and then you know he died, and there was pictures all through the streets. You know, tributes afterwards. People had gone and brought tributes because he'd maybe inspired their music career. And I'm not saying that people sometimes get involved because they're sad, but I think that they sometimes get involved because of the heritage part of it. You know, like it sort of inspired their career, maybe, or.
And certainly that's more local as well, isn't it? So like if somebody who's from, you know, we're from Birmingham, so, you know, if somebody from Birmingham passes away, you know, there's always some tenuous link that you know somebody that knows somebody that knows, you know, whatever. But we're more invested in that because it is more local, which also, unless you know them personally, doesn't make any sense really, does it? But
No.
yeah, very interesting. So, you know, the natural progression for me from that is to talk about something that is more recent, which is COVID.
Yes. That was a massive coming together of the nation.
It was also rather divisive, wasn't it? You know,
Yes.
Did you get vaccinated or did you not? Which team are you on? There was a lot of that.
Yeah, there was a lot of that.
But
I thought you were asking me then. I got a bit nervous.
yeah, don't say on live. Somebody's bound to leave us a comment.
Yeah.
So, I mean, watching that unfold as
I mean,
adults,
it was terrifying. Terrifying.
But did you? At one point, I just thought, is the actual objective here to make everyone so terrified, and that is the right word, so frightened that we're never going to leave our houses and we're not going to connect with anybody and we're not going to hug anyone ever again and we're not going to, you know, was that the purpose? Was it really that serious? And, you know, how on earth people are still navigating grief now that was experienced through that time.
Yeah. I mean, do you know the figures? I can't remember the figures. I mean, they were published daily, weren't they? The death toll.
My ex-husband watched the news every night, and after about 3 weeks, I thought, I can't do this anymore. This is making me depressed.
Yeah, it was shocking. I mean, I had to work. My
That
husband worked throughout COVID. We both worked, and it didn't really.
I worked throughout COVID as well.
It didn't really change my sort of day-to-day routine that much because I had to go to work. But there was a lot going on.
There must have been a lot of legislation for you in your job at the mortuary.
Well, I wasn't at the mortuary then.
You weren't?
No,
Were you
that's just
paramedic
before. I worked in surgery, day surgery. So day surgery stopped. And then they were like trying to find out what to do with us, and we had to socially distance. So obviously couldn't do any surgery.
Right, so you were still going to work.
Still going to work.
Socially distancing, but not performing any surgeries.
Testing daily for COVID. Then they would push you out into do like community stuff to go and do injections and, you know, all sort of try and give you other jobs.
To administer the vaccine?
Yeah, try and get you to do other
that?
jobs. I didn't go and do it. I wasn't allocated that, but there was other things.
Right.
And then they sort of, because it was part of the NHS, you had to sort of keep going. So it was, although you weren't doing the life-saving stuff that a lot of the NHS staff were doing, that was probably horrendous for them. You know, there was talk of people being moved on to wards. A lot of people were off sick. Some people had to isolate. You know, if you were vulnerable, you had to isolate. And I've got autoimmune conditions. So, you know, I wasn't somebody who I didn't have
worried
to.
about that.
I don't think I was. I was so caught up in just The thing that bothered me most was throughout COVID that I was concerned for my loved ones. And the more that I saw people dying and death on the TV and in the media and talked about daily at the daily briefing at work, and do you know what I mean? Like all that stuff. It was almost like the fear factor.
That for me is what's interesting, the fear factor. So at the time of COVID, I had one of the very few times in my life where I've had a job that's not in entertainment, and I worked for the YMCA. And I wasn't furloughed because we were working on a project called NCS at the time. And at the beginning of every day, we had all those stats related to us all day whilst they were trying to keep us, engaged in work that, involved young people all coming together physically. So it was never going to happen, was it? But instead, we'll just keep you working. But it was. But I think that we ended up, didn't we? Everybody ended up with this level of fear that we were going to somehow all die from COVID. Or you were going to be fine and you were going to give it to somebody who was compromised and who then potentially would die from it. I think that for me was a bigger fear, that I would give it to like carrying
a loved one.
Yeah.
And then if I've got older parents, if they would get it, and then that would be my fault.
I can't begin to imagine how awful it must have been for people who had an elderly or infirm relative in a hospital or a care facility and who was denied seeing them, and then they died.
And then couldn't even go to the funeral. Well,
all of that is like, how on earth do you begin to navigate loss when you're thrown that entire scenario?
Yeah. It's madness.
I mean, I don't know anyone that lost anybody to COVID.
Don't you?
No. Which I've always found very interesting.
Some of our mortuary,
a lot of people.
Yeah, some of our rates at the mortuary, after I started just after COVID, they said that it was actually quieter because there were less accidents, accidental deaths, things like that, less people out and about. So although
that does make sense.
Although there was still a lot of deaths, there wasn't as many as you would imagine. They had pictures of pop-up mortuaries, didn't they? And the media made it sound like there was bodies everywhere,
stacking up in open graves. I don't know. I often have to be really careful what you say on a podcast that's available to everyone, but I'm never quite sure what is perpetuated to us through the media should wholeheartedly be believed all of the time. I'm not saying that it is inaccurate completely. I just think that we ought to probably, use our brains and maybe dig
bring
a little.
Your salt with you. Take a pinch of it every now and then.
But I didn't actually know anybody that died of COVID. I know some people whose elderly grandparents, grandma, COVID went on the death certificate, but it wasn't the cause of death.
No.
So I think that begged a lot of questions for people, especially with the theme of our podcast being collective grief, made people, again, it brought them together in some ways, but it also was quite divisive because if you didn't believe that it needed, the measures that were in place were so strict, if you didn't believe that they needed to happen and you were friends with somebody who really did believe it needed to happen, you've got a massive conflict, haven't you?
Yeah.
You've got a nation in conflict and fear.
Yeah. And then the people in charge are at parties,
And that's
doesn't
exactly
always
what
help, does it?
happened, yeah.
Yeah. I think as a nation, we came together during COVID for a lot of things. I mean, we clapped at 8 o'clock for the NHS.
Yeah.
Did you were party to that or not?
Yeah, did it on this main street.
Do it.
Our friends down the road, he got his trumpet out and did somewhere over the rainbow every night. It was, really quite
magical,
something.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
That people can come together. I think we were connected in the fact that we felt the pain of all those that were dying and it was being reported. And we were all really fucking grateful that our family wasn't dying.
Yes,
which is,
Yeah.
You're like, oh my God, that's so sad because you are worried about your own family.
Yeah.
And, we were just grateful it wasn't us going through it.
I felt really, really sad for care assistants. So the people who are paid very little to do a very responsible job. So all of those people are working in nursing homes, that were basically essentially tied to those homes, not really, they were completely responsible for the well-being of these very elderly and infirm people with this threat of COVID hanging over them all of the time. I felt so bad for those people
Yeah, and
because they
those people are more vulnerable to, their clients would be more vulnerable to coughs, colds, pneumonias, whatever. And, the very fact that they're being threatened with COVID that could kill them and that it would sweep through the whole place.
This is what I mean. The care workers weren't really supposed to be calling doctors in, even when these people were very, very poorly. They were
sort of left to die.
Left to die, exactly. Like avoiding. But they're not medical professionals, care workers. They're not doctors, are they? And they're not even nurses.
No.
That for me was very...
But on a human level, on a very human level, on the very basic human level, leaving somebody to die, it made it sound like there was not enough resources for everybody. So those who have had their lives, they can just die.
Yeah.
Because we need to keep the resources for everybody else.
Yeah.
It was very much like, if you were on a boat and this was going to happen, you were going to think, who we just throw overboard?
Yeah.
You get them
kind of just discounted all of the elderly in nursing homes in that situation.
Well, you're expendable. You're done.
Yeah.
But then, were we at risk of running out of ventilators? I mean, I don't know because I didn't work in the thick of it. But like you say, how much of it is sort of fabricated to promote panic and to keep people in line?
Well, it's my feeling on it. I can't believe that you were just so audacious and controversial, Carrie. I feel like hugging you.
Well, don't, because we're just socially distancing.
Not anymore. We're distancing because we can't get away from our own microphones.
So what does Grief of a Nation say about us? What do you think it says about us?
Of our nation or any nation?
Of any nation that comes together. I mean, like America were... the whole world was, 9/11.
We do well with solidarity, don't we? Regardless of what it is. Humans, this human psychology, we do well coming together and working together and probably grieving together and being joyful together. We do well in packs.
Yes.
We're animals, essentially. But here, I had a little look into, did a bit of research. I found it really interesting, psychologically, we are calmer when other people are suffering too. So, if we're all grieving or being sad about the same thing, we are actually comforted by other people feeling as shit as we do, which is interesting.
That makes total sense.
But it makes sense, yeah.
It's like trauma bonding.
Yeah, absolutely. This is so awful. I can't get away with it. Will you come down with me?
Yeah, I'm outraged and so am I. Good, I'm glad we're both outraged together. Yeah. This is horrendous. This is, it's like that with everything, isn't it?
Yeah, although I suppose you could argue that when people are outraged together and they feel marginalised, that's when you can get some really violent responses to things, can't you? I don't know. But solidarity we've already talked about. I think we do really well, don't we, by coming together.
Yes, I agree.
But COVID, interestingly, was basically telling you not to do that. The only way you could show your support was to stay indoors and not actually converse with anybody physically. Although we had phones, didn't we, and the internet and everything else.
Online quizzes.
And online quizzes, which we're about to record.
If you want to access that. I think it says about us that we all want connection. We all want
and we
shared experience.
Shared experience. And we are bought into the concept of ritualistic death, dying and grief, that if you're denied that, it has an impact as well. So if you're denied the ritual of visiting somebody at their bedside when they're dying, being with them when they die, organising their funeral, attending their funeral, burying them, cremating them, whatever it is, if we're denied all of those ritualistic acts which we're culturally brought up on, where are you? You can't come together. All of those things rely on community, especially a funeral. That's where you get the whole family together and all the people that knew that person. If that ceases to exist, there's no coming together, is there? I think that must be
no end.
So
it's almost like no closure.
No closure, exactly.
And for what closure that a funeral can provide. Maybe it's more about us than about them when we think about sort of grief of a nation. If you're grieving So you're grieving a celebrity, and you're physically grieved by it. Maybe it's more about us and our like, even though it's a shared loss, it's more about the personal.
It's more individual, which interesting totally ties in with what you said about how you thought your mom felt when Princess Diana died. She could make that relatable, and how my mom's grief at the Jamie Bulger story was about the horror of it, that it could be a child she knows, that it could be somebody the age of her child. So it's very individual. It's down to
although
that
it's
person.
shared, it's very personal.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I suppose the only time you can ever really collectively grieve anybody is if you know them, if they're a family member and you all know, or friend and you all know them. Otherwise,
But then I still think each individual relationship is individual.
completely different. Yeah.
I was reading a bit about 9/11. I know that we haven't touched on 9/11, but I mean, that was a huge sort of period of grief for the world, not just for America. Although it happened in America.
Oh, the scale of it was so big.
It was
though.
huge. It was absolutely huge. 2,977 people died, and also then 19 hijackers. On
We've
top
got
of that,
David Ferrugio from
Dead Talks.
Dead Talks. He will be coming on to our show at some point. We do keep trying with him, but his whole podcast is really because he lost his dad in 9/11,
Yeah.
isn't it? So he's done an entire podcast based on that.
Yeah,
that loss.
and it is fascinating. I went to the 9/11 memorial recently,
Right.
and it is absolutely one of the most emotional ways. Like, I felt so emotional when I was there, and I
Really?
haven't lost anybody in 9/11.
That's interesting.
But the actual building and the sheer size of the memorial outside and the museum inside, it was absolutely breathtaking.
Really?
It really was.
Wow.
Breathtaking. And I've since then watched a program on it, and 400 of those people that died were first responders. So they were all like emergency services.
Oh my gosh.
And you see actual footage on this documentary that I watched of them like running back in to save people after they've already got out, saving somebody. And then there were stories of like the people who survived it and the sheer trauma that it caused.
Yeah.
Seeing something like that happen, seeing people
And the
jump from the
tenacity.
building.
Oh, that was
knowing they were going to die. The phone
tenacity
calls.
of human spirit, like you've just said about those first responders going back in.
Yeah, going back
imagine?
in. Honestly, it gave me goosebumps watching it. And how it's not only the act that was horrific and horrifying, it's the deaths since.
Yeah.
Since it's happened,
Yeah.
there will be people who have died from toxic fumes from the thing, things they've inhaled, injuries. There'll be people who've probably taken their
Suicidal.
own life
Yeah.
from PTSD.
Yeah.
The trauma of going in.
Yeah.
They maybe lost their lives to alcoholism because that was a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
After dealing with it.
All of those children without a mother or father that they lost.
And their total quality of life will be different. That they, it may have been different. So, it was an absolute world, of the whole world was grieving that.
Yeah.
That was something. And I remember
Do you remember
that.
where you were when you heard that?
I don't remember where I was, but I remember being like gobsmacked.
Yeah, it's the most accurate description of how people were. I remember I was at college. I was with James, and it had broken. I'm just trying to think because it wouldn't have been a time where we had news feeds to our phones or anything like that. So
2001.
it would have been on the radio. So the teaching staff probably told us. But I remember going and watching it. We were in a local town. We must have watched it in a pub on a TV somewhere, something like that, or a coffee bar, something like that. And just watching everybody's faces that were agog, mouth open.
Yeah.
'Cause no one could. Just watching that footage over and over and over again, the plane going in.
Yeah.
And I think it was very palpable in that immediacy and the coming days after, just walking around anywhere, that's all anybody was thinking about.
Yeah.
That's all anybody was concentrating on. It's the only thing people were reading about. And I think you could see it on people's faces.
Yeah, it was sheer shock, wasn't it? And I think also that the fact that people were thinking, shit, if it could happen to America,
Could happen here.
it can happen anywhere. And I think it filled people with fear.
People hold America in such high esteem, thinking it's impenetrable.
Yeah.
But actually, you know, it was targeted and...
For a reason, because they were trying to prove a point, weren't they? And I think it really scared everybody. I remember feeling the anxiety afterwards.
Yeah.
And this terror threat and it being very real, very real.
It ramped up the idea of terror attacks like enormously, didn't it? And it still is the case. And again, it was very divisive between cultures, wasn't it? And religion, and had such a knock-on effect. I found this was interesting. This is just going back to the personal versus collective. It just says, collective grief versus personal grief. Personal grief is messy, non-linear and private, which we talk about a lot. However, collective grief is visible, structured by media and socially validated. And isn't that interesting as a stark...
It's a massive...
They're hugely different.
Yeah.
So we can almost take more comfort in a community grieving than we can doing it on our own.
Perhaps it's because as a community, if everybody's doing it, it gives us permission to feel what we really feel.
Yeah.
And rather than being embarrassed to grieve.
This is exactly the word that you said, permission. It says feeling more allowed to do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely
it does.
Right.
If everybody's doing it, it's acceptable.
And saying that personal grief can feel invisible by comparison.
Yeah.
Which we know.
Totally agree. Yeah, I think that's summed it up beautifully.
Yeah. Well, that was very, very interesting.
It was very
episode.
interesting.
Enjoyed
Yeah.
that.
I can't wait to speak to Dave Frisier and see, really find out
Shall
the
we
facts
pop that on our
about
task list
9/11
today?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, we'll do that.
Well, thank you for listening.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
We're dying to talk to you. Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in to It's a Death Sentence. Please keep listening to our weekly episodes.
And if you like our show, please like, share and subscribe.
We are dying to talk to you.